Hi, everyone. This is Chef Rick Moonen, interviewing from my studio in Las Vegas. Here's where we get to dive into deep conversations with some of the original gangsters of cuisine. Ocean Raised is the name of the podcast. We're all globally connected by the oceans of the world and the food culture that it shares. And today I get to speak with an amazing man that has been around the world. And he personifies everything that I believe in and everything that means so much to me. His name is Rick Tremonto. He's an amazing chef. For 11 years, Rick was the executive chef and founding partner at Chicago's world-renowned four-star fine dining restaurant, True, in partnership with Richard Melman of Let Us Entertain You Enterprises. Tremonto was also culinary director of Tremonto Steak and Seafood and RT Seafood Bar in the West End Hotel in Wheeling, Illinois. And for those of you that don't know of Wheeling, Illinois, I know from an early part of my career, Wheeling was Jean Blanchet and Le Francais. I mean, these were places that, as a cuisinier growing up, you'd save your money. You'd go places and you'd dine in restaurants. I've been to True in Chicago. I've been to Charlie Trotter's in Chicago. I've been to Rick Bayless's restaurant in Chicago. Chicago is a mecca of amazing experiences. And what I want to talk to Rick a little bit about later on, as we learn a little bit more about him and how he got to be this amazing chef, is seafood in the Midwest. But that's another thing. In 2010, Rick announced his partnership with Louisiana native John Folse. For those of you who don't know John Folse, he's a personality beyond himself. You know, we think of Louisiana, we think of New Orleans, we think of Emerald, but John has written tomes, books that you could weightlift with on the subject of Creole and all the cuisines that surround that area. And it's so rich and so beautiful. So he opened this restaurant. They started a company, actually, Rick and John, called Home on the Range. And the two of them opened a restaurant called Revolution, Evolution. It evolves. It goes on and on. And it's unbelievable. I mean, I remember walking through the restaurant and just going into the kitchens and the tile and the vastness of it, sitting at the bar whenever I don't think there was ever a time that I would go to New Orleans or I wouldn't stop into Revolution. Maybe if it was just to sit and have the amazing rabbit gumbo, there's just, these are the memories in my mind. So there's so much more. We'll get into it, but I also want to, talk a little bit about his accomplishments. He's written 8 books. Many of them were nominated for major awards. Speaking of awards, of course, Rick Tremonto has accomplished an amazing list of awards. 3 James Beard Award winner. All right. I mean, I've been nominated and I won 1 award, but it was for some stupid, video I did in Alaska. Not stupid, but these are the things that we, as the original gangsters, we all kind of traveled together, but not necessarily in each other's realm, but we all follow certain trajectories. We all followed each other. As you can see, is behind Rick is every cookbook ever written. So he obviously came to New York and held a gun to Mac Waxman's face and said, "I want every book in Kitchen Arts and Letters and give it to me now." But and that's not all. Michelin stars are like the covetous accomplishment of any chef who is serious. Rick has gotten two Michelin stars. I mean, that's there's only 3 that you can get. Rick, you got 2, just like that. And he also was given the highest awards from every Chicago publication, as well as let's see, New Orleans Magazine gave him and John Folse Best New Restaurant. So what I want to find out is Rick's journey. How'd you get to there, Rick? You started off in Rochester, New York.
Rochester, New York at Wendy's Old Fashioned Hamburgers. They used to put the old fashioned hamburger part at the end. Now they cut it. Now it's just Wendy's. But 1977 with a guy named Dave Thomas, the original Dave Thomas, and a guy named Dick Fox, who was the largest franchisee at the time of Wendy's. It all started there.
How did you end up going to Wendy's, and what part of your life? I mean,
Well, I love the fact that you refer growing up a gangster kid. So being part of the original gangsters was kind of rung a bell, positive and negative, right?
Mm-hmm.
My dad went to prison when I was 15.
Wow.
Quit high school. My mom was a cleaning lady at the city school district. She was a lunchroom lady during the day and was a cleaning lady at night. I was an only child growing up, so no brothers and sisters. Very traditional Italian family.
How many brothers and sisters?
Say again?
Do you have brothers and sisters?
No brothers and sisters. Only child.
Okay. Wow.
So it was just me and my mom. And growing up at that time in the mid 70s, food wasn't there. It was, Julia Child and Galloping Gourmet and James Beard on TV and
Jacques Pepin.
Jacques Pepin. Absolutely.
That was it.
But I mean, the spirit of food was always in my house. My mom's family was from Naples, Napolitan, and my dad's family was from Abruzzi. So at one time, I always had a grandmother in the house. My mom's mom lived with us first, and when my grandfather passed, my grandmother moved in with us. And when she passed, by then, my dad's mom was ready to move in the house. So it was always a grandmother there. So it was a grandmother, a mom, and myself, pretty much. So growing up with two strong, culinarians in a lot of ways and tradition, but no dad. My dad was in the restaurant business his whole life. He was a bartender, but he was involved in the unions, and he got involved with racketeering and, organized crime at the time. And,
Chicago? Never.
No, New York.
Oh, that's right, Rochester.
Yeah, Rochester, New York. Yeah. And, did 7 years in a federal prison, and would go visit him on Wednesdays and Saturdays and talk to him through the glass. And, it was it kind of, for a 15, 16-year-old kid, it blew up your world. Like, school stopped at 10th grade, reading was difficult, spelling was difficult, finding a job was difficult. So the options were slim. You could go work at a gas station. Back in the day, they actually had something called, for all you young kids, a gas attendant, where the cars would pull up and you'd clean the windshield wipers and you'd fill up the car and check the oil, and hope for a tip, right?
Yeah.
But there was a new restaurant opening in my neighborhood where I grew up on Lake Avenue and Dewey Avenue in downtown Rochester. And they served square burgers. So it was like a new big thing. Like, nobody had seen a square burger before. It was like, holy moly. So I went and applied. I knocked at the back door. This guy answered the back door, and I said, look, I would love to fill out an application, but I don't have a high school diploma. I don't know anything about the cooking industry. And he just immediately stuck his hand out and said, hey, my name is Dave. Come on in, just have a seat. And we chatted. He told me his story of being an orphan and, growing up and his whole thing. And he said, look, I'm going to give you an opportunity. I'm going to give you a chance. Be here tomorrow, 7 a.m., and I'm gonna give you a shot. So I came in the next day, and back in that time, you used to get bulk, like 30-pound bulk ground hamburger, and you'd put it in a hopper. There'd be a machine, and it was like a hopper, and it would patty out the square burgers in between butcher paper. I remember it like it was yesterday. 15 burgers to a stack. There's 6 stacks to a hotel pan. It went on the right part of the cooler. Like, the training is always stuck in my head from that moment on, how to clean and build a frosty machine, how to change a fryer. Like, the whole thing just kind of like was like an aha moment, right? 2 years I spent there and just said, this is it. I mean, it was really that simple. It was like, there was no hesitation on, I could make a living, and that's all I was looking to do. It wasn't like, oh, I want to be the chef, or, oh, I want like my grandmother. It was like, how do I bring a paycheck home to be able to participate in, you know, my less than fortunate situation at that point, right?
That's the beauty of this industry. It opens its arms to those in need. And if you have the drive, which I didn't bring it up, but you have got an incredible drive. Your resume, and we're going to go through all of that, is blows my mind. It just, you know, the chefs that you chose to apprentice under, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So Wendy's, unbelievable. That's super cool.
Yeah, I mean, no, not a lot of romance as far as pedigree. You know, it was just work ethic, and it was somebody opening a door. I have a great saying to a lot of my young chefs that come through. You know, always send a thank you letter that somebody, you know, who, you know, helped you along the way, and always answer the back door for the kids that are trying to get into your kitchen, because that's the you know, play it forward kind of thing, and
Right.
able to do that is very important in my life, because it would never have happened, and it was
Right.
just that moment. It was really just a moment in time,
Sure.
changed the whole trajectory of all of it. So by the time I turned 18, it was like, okay, I could go work in a real restaurant per se, not a fast food restaurant. And they, you know, you had to be 18 to work in a place that served alcohol. So I was excited. There was going to be a few more dollars per hour. I was going to be able to go into a full service restaurant, like the whole 9 yards. And there was a place called the Scotch and Sirloin, which was a very famous steakhouse in upstate New York, Rochester, Buffalo, Syracuse.
Mm-hmm.
The few at the very beginning that would like age all their own meat and cut all their own meat. And it was run by an amazing guy named Jim Kurtz. And Jim was like a Vietnam War vet that came back from the war, opened up a steakhouse, and had master butcher skills, like mad butcher skills. And I wanted to learn it. And I came in and did another couple of years at the Scotch, and learned how to cut meat, and learned how to work the grill, and learned how to work a prime rib station and a station. And it was like, you know, I was the spud guy for 6 months, just making mashed potatoes and baked potatoes. And, you know, do you want with or sour cream or butter or both? Like, again, it was like all this early training in my mind that is, I laugh at all the time, because I still remember it. You remember those things that marked your life from the beginning.
And you busted out and you went down to New York. How did you get to Tavern on the Green?
So I knew that there had to be something more. I knew I needed to get out of upstate New York. I knew I needed to kind of start my journey. So 1981, 82, I packed up my stuff. I had met two people that wanted to go to New York, and at the time, you know, it had just started. Like, it had just started where, you know, Jonathan Waxman and Alfred Portali and Larry Forgione and, you know, all these great chefs were just starting to peek their head in. And New York was an exciting time. So to get to Manhattan, I had no money per se. I needed something to do it with. So I went with these two folks, and one of them was my first partner and wife, Gail Gand, pastry chef. And we got a 6th floor walk up in the West Village on West 10th between 5th and Anna. If you remember back in the day, Belgium in Texarkana. And my 6th floor walk up, we sublet it from a piano player, a French piano player. So in the 1-bedroom apartment, there was a bedroom that had a piano in it. Had a bunk bed stairs, so the bed was above that. This tiny kitchen and this tiny bathroom, and that was it. And it was like we shared it. One slept on the couch, one slept in the room, one slept on the floor sometimes. And we would look out our window, and our entertainment was right across the street was the Joffrey Ballet.
Oh, yeah.
Cars on the window. So at night, you know, it was like you'd watch either the kitchen downstairs at Texarkana through the window, or you'd look at the Joffrey Ballet right across. Like, that was our TV Food Network, and that was our MTV, right?
Sure.
And
what position did you work at Tavern?
I just started interviewing. I literally just started interviewing everywhere. There was a gentleman named Patrick Clark who was at Tavern. And Patrick, again, gave me an opportunity as a daytime prep guy and scored the gig.
That's
and
huge, though. I mean, that place was a monster. It was just
Monster.
a machine. Patrick
Yeah.
Clark, an amazing black American chef that just was tremendous. So you got your
Tremendous.
foot in amazing
And,
doors.
and I have to tell you this one quick story. Our prep buckets, just to show you the volume of the Tavern, our prep buckets or any container that we would prep was usually like a 5-gallon or 10-gallon garbage can, like a huge gray garbage can. So if you were peeling garlic, you know, they wheel up this 10-gallon garbage can, or mirepoix or carrots or onions or celery, whatever it is, right? So incredible volume. And, you know, after a year and a half, you know, I got pretty burnt out in that and wanted to do refinement. And there was a guy named Alfred Portali at the Gotham Bar and Grill. And Alfred was from Buffalo. So I thought, you know, Patrick,
you're like this.
we had a lot to talk about. We talked about snow and we talked about food. Went in and interviewed, and, you know, Alfred really gave me the break. Alfred was the magic to the whole thing at the beginning for me.
Wow.
Because, again, going in there, super humble. All these guys are pedigree. All these guys are like CIA grads. They did their internships with Pierre Gagnaire or Michel Girard or Jacques Maximum or Alain Chappelle. And I had none of that. So for me, I was just going in super, you know,
Plain and humble.
Yeah, super humble. Didn't speak French, nothing. Alfred just kind of wrapped his arms around me. But that kitchen, you know, there's guys like Tom Valente in the kitchen, was my sous chef. And, you know, there's guys like Bobby Flay, and there was Gail Gann, and there was like all this energy of New York. And Miller was the food critic at the time.
Sure.
I was only there 3 months, and we got our first 3-star review in that environment. And I'd never seen a restaurant change overnight like that. That was a New York experience. That
the power of Brian Miller.
Up the next day, life was different.
I remember that. When I was at Chelsea Central, we got reviewed by Brian, and it came out on Fridays to review then.
That's right.
And then Saturday, we didn't have enough food for all the reservations that were made. I was begging every seafood purveyor to get, you know, all kinds of food. And I was running around on a Saturday to pick it up in Long Island and in Queens. And I remember the people at these times, because the purveyors that said, I can't help you out, sorry, man, Saturday. I dropped their asses. I said, that's how you go, man. You know, and then holy smokes. So what my memory of Portali and the Gotham Bar and Grill, wow. I mean, I remember looking up in the ceiling and seeing parachutes. I remember going in the kitchen and seeing plates attached to a large piece of wood with how much each cup, saucer, plate, glass, everything was attached to a piece of wood with the price under it. So then when you heard, typically in the kitchen, you hear crash in the back, and we all go, oh my God. No, you knew what you just broke. You look down there and you could add it up. That was just $50.
And it was a typical hardcore New York kitchen, because it was in the basement. They were going up 2 flights of stairs like this, 2 flights, you know, it was crazy. I don't know how their backs survived or their knees survived, but
you got to get the guys from Britain.
And we did some volume. I mean, we were doing 300, 320 a night, you know, we were doing some volume out of that restaurant. It was pretty impressive, you know, and
that was a treat to go
for a while, you know, again, a couple years, and Alfred was always about education, and, you know, it was always like, what's next? Who's hot? What's going on? There's 2 things going on at that time that I wanted to experience, you know, in New York. And I knew I had about a 10-year run in New York. So if I was going to be in New York for 8 or 10 years, there was a bunch of stuff I wanted to do. And, you know, one of them was traditional French. Even didn't speak French, Alfred was like, you have to go into a French kitchen and get your ass kicked, and you're going to have to figure out the language, and you're going to have to go through the stations, and you know, especially if you ever want to get to France, you know, like, to me, like, going to, you know, working at Wendy's was certainly like, you know, culinary high school. Going to New York was culinary, college. How do you get to grad school? How do you get to a place where somebody's going to be able to help you get to a place like a stage in France or Italy or Spain and help you get there? So Alfred threw me right into La Grenouille. And
oh wow, the frog.
I came in as a ultimatier, and he had it set so I did like a year at La Grenouille, a year at La Reserve, and then Aurora opened up with Chef Pan. And then I had the opportunity to go really be like, that was my first poissonnière position. So it was.
That's a big station too. The fish station.
I mean, it was an incredible evolution of the whole thing.
What was that like working in Aurora? I mean, I remember the dining room was just looked like the old booths looked like tilt-a-whirls. You just sit in these like individual booths, had your own little party going on. What was that like? That must have been rough. I heard he wasn't an easy person.
No, Pango was hard. He was super talented. He was brilliant, but there was a lot of substance. There was a lot of 80s going on up there. And I'll tell you one quick story that'll explain it all. I had to work the amuse-bouche station, which later, ironically, I wrote an amuse-bouche book.
You did.
It was burned into my brain. Saturday night, fully set up, ready to go. And Pango was coming around, and he had, he was in a state as well.
Half a bottle of booze in him. Go ahead. It's okay.
And was going through your station and was looking at all the amuse-bouche and found something obviously that he didn't like, and he threw the whole station away. And he called his sous chefs over and he said, you need to set up this station immediately. And this was like 15 minutes before service, right? So there was a lot of that. There was a lot of getting dumped in the weeds constantly for, things that probably could have been adjusted or fixed at the time. And Joe wasn't, Joe was hard too. He would come through the kitchen and him and Pango had their thing. But, it was an amazing time. And then I had the opportunity to go to Chicago. And that's a whole other journey at that point.
Well, you were ready though. You were ready at this point.
I was ready. And I ended up in Chicago because of Gail. Gail Gann was from here, and she had worked with Jonathan Waxman at the time. So she was AM. So that whole clique, like when Paul Prudhomme came to New York to cook at Bubba's, right? And it was the Paul Prudhomme show on the road. Got to go spend a night there and watch that whole thing. And, Paul used to sit in a chair and sing songs during service. And
big man.
People in New York never saw anything like that in the middle of service, right? There was some wild, interesting things that have happened.
And the other just
to work at for a while was, did you ever hear of Batons, Richard Krause?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Right. So California cuisine was just hitting, all the rage with Alice Water and Jeremiah Towers and Wolfgang Puck. And, here's Richard Krause in the West Village, doing this extraordinary California cuisine. And again, I wanted to see that and experience that and go spend some time there. And I got to spend almost a little over a year there, and it was right before I left to go back to Chicago. And we used to get these boxes, Rick, and we used to call them sunshine in a box. Shipping, it was like the first time I ever saw food shipped from California to New York. And you'd open up this box and literally, everybody would come out on a Thursday. The FedEx truck would show up. The boxes would come off the truck. We'd pop open the boxes. And there was like whole California lamb. There'd be all these baby vegetables I've never seen.
Patty pan squash.
Little patty pan squash.
Yeah.
Like I never seen anything like it before. And all that Thursday, and I was a daytime sous at that time, it was just prep. You'd be breaking down all the California stuff all, Thursday, getting ready for the weekend. But that was the first time it was like, oh, there's a whole other world out here,
Yeah.
It was pretty special.
So you went back to Chicago, and Richard Melman was the
I got a chance to do an interview with Rich, and Rich was a big Gotham fan. So when he saw my resume, he immediately go, "Oh, you worked with Alfred," and I'm like, "Yeah." I did a tasting for a restaurant called Scoozy at the time. And Scoozy hadn't opened yet. It was just about to open. And did the tasting, did really well, got the position. And he sat down with me and he said, you know, Scoozy's going to do about 800 covers a night. And I was like, wow, you know, I said,
Back to the tavern.
it was a very different style of restaurant. I said, you know, do you have anything smaller? He said, yes, I have a restaurant called Avanzari, which is about, you know, some higher end 3-star Northern Italian restaurant. And I said, I think that may be more appropriate for me. So I ended up at Avanzari and worked at Avanzari for 3 years, and then got a chance to be part of Rich's corporate team. And I did openings. So we opened up the pump room, and he was developing Mangiano's in the corner bakery at the time. And, you know, all this cool R&D stuff, you know, but I still, Rick, wasn't settled. I was still missing grad school.
Okay.
School was Europe. And I kept saying to Rich, you know, do you have any connections in Europe? Can you help me get to Europe? I really want to cook in London or France or Spain or Italy. So Rich made some phone calls for me, and he hooked me up with a guy named Bob Payton. And Bob owned a country house hotel in Leicestershire, England, that he bought from Lord and Lady Gretton, who was the Bass Beer Corporation. It was their summer home. And he was looking for a chef and a pastry chef. And he was friends with, you know, Michel Roux and Raymond Blanc and Nico Ladanus and Anton Mosselman, and all these British chefs were friends with Bob, and they would come up to this country house hotel for the weekend and hang out. So Bob invited us and flew us out, and me and Gail did a tasting, and we got the gig. And immediately Bob got us, you know, visas, and we went over there for 4 years, and then spent another 2 years just staging and working. And the key there was Raymond Blanc. Raymond Blanc became one of my dearest mentors and friend, and he did all up for me. You know, when Pierre Gagnère did his dinner at Raymond Blanc's, he invited us. I got to meet Gagnère. That's how I was able to go stage at Gagnère. I wanted to work at Chappelle's. Gagnère would call Chappelle. Gail wanted to work with Michel Roux. He would call Michel Roux. So everything kind of started to snowball for us in Europe, as far as being able to spend 3 months, 6 months, you know, here and there, and tie all that together. And then Gail's mom passed away, and we were kind of abruptly pulled out of this situation and had to go back to Chicago. And then I went right back to Rich, and he hired me again immediately. And then kind of started that journey again with him. But again, now, you know, now I want to do something super ultra fine dining, and I wanted to do something high end. But Rich was, you know, led us as a company, was in the direction of, we're doing high volume, we're doing Mangiano, we're doing Scoozies, we're doing, you know, big projects. And
he was a prolific
guy named Henry Adania, who had this little tiny restaurant called Trio in Evanston, who he had purchased from, it used to be Cafe Provençal, with a lady called Leslie Rice. And she passed away, and Henry took it over, and he hired me and Gail, and it was my first chef position. And finally had the opportunity to kind of showcase the first time what my food would look like and what my style of food was. Well, we had no money. I mean, we were opening up this restaurant, $1. True was $1 be the con, right? So when we were getting ready to open, we didn't really have enough money for China. Like, inherited all the stuff there. You know, it was kind of a turnkey restaurant. It was all old. It was all super dated. So Henry gave us a budget to go find some China. Well, one day me and Gail wandered into back in the day before Home Depot, there was something called Builder's Square. We walked into a Builder's Square, and we started walking down the aisles that had like kitchen flooring, like 12 by 12 granite tiles and sheets of glass for like a medicine cabinet, and, you know, all this interesting surfaces that wasn't necessarily China, but they were surfaces, right? we went to secondhand stores and we bought all this different, contemporary china, and we kind of put it all together. And Trio was really based on tasting menus. So we could really lay out an 8-course or a 10-course, 2 or 3 tasting menus, and that's what it was. And it blew up, Rick. I mean, we got 4 stars from everybody. Gail got her show on the Food Network. We got a book deal. Like, it all just exploded.
What year is this, Rick?
This was 91.
Okay.
92.
Yeah. So Food Network hasn't even started yet. That's 94.
Now we're in, right at like 99, 2000. So the whole thing is exploding, and hey, we get married, we have a child, everything's evolving. We opened up a second restaurant called Brasserie Tea. We had that for a few years. We had a fire, we lost it. And then we decided to go do something else because Rich Melman came back around and said, hey, how would you like to do something like you're doing at Trio, only in Chicago? And at that time, Trotter was just starting to explode. And just to reel back for a minute, when I first came back from Europe, right before I did my tasting with Rich, I went to Charlie and said, look, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I'm looking, I need a place to cook or to continue to work my craft. Can I work here? And he said, absolutely. So this was now probably Charlie opened in 87. So this is like 89. So, I ended up being at Trotter's for a year and a half. And,
oops, I forgot that.
Yeah. And Charlie, again, changed the whole trajectory of everything. Like, whatever you thought was good, it was better.
Mm-hmm.
Continue to rethink and re-push. Because Trotter was the pinnacle. Bonchet and Trotter at the time were the pinnacle. Is if you were going to compete in that arena, that was the bar. You had to be at that bar. And Rich kind of knew that and gave us the budget to, design a kitchen and $1 million kitchen and a beautiful, restaurant, $1 million worth of art. We had $100,000 just for China, just for our China budget, just to buy extraordinary China. And we designed the caviar staircase, and we did all this stuff on glass, and we did some pretty special stuff. And again, we were doing 4 or 5 tasting menus, but we did it again. It was amazing. It was really, we had an incredible staff. Nothing in that restaurant would have happened without the team that we had put together. And they're all their own celebrity chefs now. It's pretty extraordinary. Graham Elliott and Chris Pandell and Jared Van Camp and Meg Ellis, and the list goes on and on and on. The folks that came through the True Kitchen, I'm so proud of them. They're like,
it was a magical spot. It truly was. I remember sitting at your bar, looking on the wall at a vertical CD player going like this, and watching that staircase go by this, and just so those that don't understand, it's just this pieces of glass continuing to go up and turn around. And you were brilliant. It was brilliant. It was truly brilliant, and I didn't know you at the time, and I didn't have the wherewithal to say, I want to talk to the chef. You would open a door. I was a lot more introverted about it. One of my early in my career, one of my biggest fears in life was public speaking. Truly was. No intention of being a celebrity or on TV or a host of a podcast or whatever. It was just a craft. It's just like Wendy's opened up your door. I worked at a place called Little King Restaurant, flipping burgers, but it was so organized. It was like a little Rolodex, everything you had to do and check all the boxes off.
I love it.
No matter where your beginnings are, it's really an amazing connection, a network of people, chefs, placements. I got to La Côte Basque in New York City from Eugene Bernard, who I worked with at the Escoffier room at the Culinary Institute of America. I never ever used a resume to get a job in my life, ever. I don't even know if I could write a resume. I got your resume and I was like, I don't know if I have enough time to read this thing. It was like 8 pages long.
There was a guy at La Côte Basque that worked at the Gotham, and I'm trying to think of his name, and I think his name was Kyle, and I think he was a sous chef there, but I just remember him doing the best impression, like the most incredible impression of your chef there.
Rashu?
Rashu. The
John
Rashu impressions. Oh.
John, okay. Back then, I didn't speak French either. So here I am. Okay, you got to see this. This is 89. 1989 when La Côte Basque opened. It was me, Charlie Palmer, Waldy Maloof. Eventually, Todd English came into the kitchen. We kicked his butt around. He was making souffles. And I mean, Bruce Egdahl, you don't know. Anyway, here we are, and Jean-Jacques Rochu would be expediting, and we got really busy because we the New York Times gave us the reviews, and I remember, I think it was Gail Green wrote in one of her articles in the magazine that the broccoli was tired, and I was responsible for the entremetier. I was in the middle between Waldy and Charlie and all these guys, and and I remember wanting to kill myself because the first time I read something that I had my hands on was given that review. I mean, but at the time you had to put on, there was like a bouquet of vegetables and purees scripted on the sides and beurre blanc with things drawn in them. But the Rashu story, he spoke French. He mumbled. Yeah. He would just, huh? So I had to learn how to, and I had many conversations with him because I needed to learn more. If I had to make cassoulet, I didn't know what cassoulet was. You couldn't go online, learn how 5 recipes for cassoulet and interpret it to Hussein style, He would just go to me, it's easy, you take the lamb, you make a choux. Okay, chef, I'll take the lamb and make a choux. I'm figuring I'm going to look this up somewhere, Rick.
That's right.
Trying to say stew, but
right.
The ST in the French language does not translate like it does in English. So it was choux. You make a choux. What? Yeah, no, he yell at you. And we would just start. Charlie, it was me. I ended up taking over for Waldy Maloof. So I was I made all the sauces. I was the saucier, very big name. And Charlie was the poissonnier. He's the fish guy. So he's the fish guy. I'm the meat guy. And obviously our careers went in different directions. But as he would expedite during a busy service, we started answering him in weird ways. And he loved it. He laughed. He was like giddy like a kid. I mean, all I would do was I had my cutting board. And I had to cook meats at different temperatures and stuff. So if you would just order things entrecôte, medium rare, I would put them in different areas of my cutting board. I knew top left was rare, top right was medium rare, medium, so that I knew what to get on and time it and all of this. And every plate had to go up top. But we started answering him with weird sounds, like you'd say, un canal, and we go. We go quack quack, no, quack, quack. And he would make us answer that way in the middle of a crazy service. He'd go, Monet, whack whack. So it was insane, and we were in a crazy hour. So we opened up the restaurant. At the end of the night, it was so hot down in the basement kitchen. Same type of deal. The waiters carrying all of them. They're all Breton. They're all from Britain. Yeah, and big guys. It was just like crazy busy going on. My feet were my shoes would be filled with sweat. Like my toes would be like sloshing in my boots. And it was crazy memories, man. New York City, those times. We were so fortunate. And I don't know why I didn't know you more, but I know a lot of the people that you worked with and a lot of things. Tom Valenti, you brought his name up. That's insane. And for you to be able to go through all of that and then to how did you get in touch with John False? That's what I want to know, actually.
Yeah. Just real quick, though, just before we jump into that, the one thing I want to say about the New York piece, because you had brought it up about, the shoe, and how to do certain things. All those kitchens that they were throwing all that terminology around at La Reserve, Aurora, same thing. Like, I didn't have a reference point. And I remember somebody in the kitchen saying, well, go look at your LaRousse and go look at your Escoffier book. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, right? So, and I wasn't a great reader, and I couldn't read well.
You had to drop out. Your dad was
during
in jail.
During all of that time. And there was no internet. There was no Googling stuff. So I had to go to the library, the New York Library, or there was a beautiful library in the West Village, actually. And I would go to that library for hours and hours and hours in the morning or at night. And I would try to find this stuff and look at it and read it. And Gail was helping me learn how to read at the time. So during the whole time in New York, that's when I learned how to read. Because where was I going to learn how to read? I had a 10th grade education. And I was trying to look up all this shit from France in French that I didn't know what it was, right? So it was crazy. It was a crazy time. So I met John, just to bridge all the way.
But may that be an inspiration to everyone. To everyone. Rick, let's take a moment for a second.
There's no excuse.
I got to point this out. Like, bring me you're tired, you're hungry, just as long as you have a desire. And you are the epitome of that, and it's that energy and the caring and the wanting to do it. That's all it takes. 10th grade reading books that you didn't know how to pronounce the words, forget it. French, and if you mispronounce slightly, you try to make an attempt to say beef bourguignon, and God forbid you didn't say it right. They go, huh? No, beef bourguignon. They go, huh? Just beef bourguignon. Oh, you mean bourguignon? I thought I was saying that. But sorry, Chef.
And it's so funny because, like you were saying about, I love how you remember the detail that you were so tired and that your feet would squish around in your boots because you were so sweaty because those kitchens were so hot.
Mm-hmm.
Shit, every day of my life like that. And it was like, I never forget, we had to tourne so much vegetable. Luckily, it was unbelievable. I mean, I couldn't even go to the bath. I was like, even when I had to go take a pee, it was like I took my tourne knife with me.
Take a box of mushrooms and started
I'm
fluting.
joking, but like to have to turn everything. Yeah. It was insane. It was just a time that you'll just never forget. It was probably some of the hardest things you've ever done in your life, but they're the most precious. Think
of the conversations that took place. Three of you, I'm just saying, three of you standing around the table with a Bain Marie in the middle and a bunch of carrots, and you're all just, so anyway, and you're making fun of each other. You're like, you call that a tourne? Man, it's got 7 sides. Top them up, and we bust each other's chops. I mean, it was Charlie Palmer, me, Chris Bow, and all these crazies, just doing all of this stuff,
Imagine how much stuff got either thrown away or given staff meal because it just wasn't up to snuff. It just wasn't inside. Just wasn't good enough.
There's all the purees. A lot of things went into purees.
That's right, 100%.
We didn't throw it. Oh, I remember I pissed off the pastry chef there.
Yeah.
It was Le Masson was his last name. Jean-Pierre Le Masson. And he was mad. He's this little pissy guy, And so we got an article.
Ask Tom Valente sometime, if you ever get the chance to see Tom again, ask him to do his Mick Jagger impression. Because Tom used to, like, when things would get really intense at the Gotham, and
Tom had that voice like this.
Tom was the one that was able to break the ice. He was like the class clown.
Oh, yeah.
He would just start doing his Jagger routine or expediting in his Mick Jagger, voice that he spot on just to break the ice. And, you miss that shit, but it never leaves you. Like, it's just burnt into your brain.
Tom became
the guys that worked, for the guys that worked in that time, you just need to say something like that, and they immediately go back to it. They immediately, oh yeah, you remember? It was like, it's a beautiful.
Right, I want to ask you one question.
Yeah.
And then I want to get into how you procured. You ran True. I mean, amazing restaurant. You had other amazing chefs with great restaurants as well. Were your peers. How did you source great seafood? I mean, by the way, the name of the podcast is Ocean Raised. So I want to get a little bit of your input on that. But before you can get a chance to think about that, because I want to hear your Julia Child story. Everybody has a Julia Child story. I want to hear yours. Do you have one?
You. You there?
Yeah. It was a little technical glitch. You're there.
That's okay. Yeah. So in the Midwest, it's always again, during that time of True, you were watching guys like Charlie Trotter and Gabino Sotolino and Jean Joho.
Yeah.
And, you fly stuff in. I mean, you were blessed to have guys like, Brown, Rod Mitchell at Brown Trading, or you had, you know, Hawaiian seafood companies, and you had all these seafood companies flying stuff in. So we got a lot of, next day FedEx fish from around the world. We were sourcing stuff from the lakes and sourcing stuff from our area, but you were flying stuff in at the end of the day. I mean, we shipped a lot of stuff in, and that's before it was, not cool to do that in some ways, but I'll tell you, we were a global restaurant serving a global clientele, and we got some pretty amazing fish every other day, 3-4 times a week. And Rod was the guy. I mean, the day he absolutely was the guy. And you have to remember, we were doing tasting menus. So the two things that we would go through the most is caviar, because everybody had a caviar staircase,
something round,
part of their tasting menu. So we were going through 4 or 5 master tins of caviar a week, and foie gras, because there was a foie gras course on every. So Hudson Valley foie gras, I was going through 35, 45 lobes of foie gras a week. I mean, incredible amount of stuff. But we had a 10-course fish menu. So for me, I was pretty insane at the time. Not only mentally and spiritually and physically insane, but just everything had to be over the top. So if you had a tasting menu at True, one of the things we were known for is everybody got something different. So for example, you'd amuse-bouche, and you'd get 6 different amuse-bouche per person. You'd go into a staircase, but then you would get 6 different cold appetizers. Like, everybody got their own different app. 6 different hot appetizers, 6 different soups. So the app station had to make 6 soups a day. You do 6 different seafood, 6 different meat or game, 6 different foie presentations. Gail then would take over, and she'd do, again, dessert amuse, and we do a cheese course, dessert amuse. We do 6 different fruit desserts, 6 different cream desserts, 6 different chocolate desserts. Everything was an excess. And we ran 4 menus. So you'd have a seafood menu, you'd have a chef's tasting menu, you'd have a seasonal menu, like we were doing tomatoes or lobster or whatever it may be. And it was, 6 courses of tomatoes or 8 courses of lobster or whatever it was. So it was a very high energy time, and it was a 24/7 kind of mindset for, 6 years of the 10. And it was a burnout. I mean, I was tired.
I hope you paid your dishwasher well, Chef. That's all I want.
We had
you had to do a couple of dishes with 6 different everythings.
I mean, we were doing 1,000 plates a night. If you think about it, we do 150 people, having 10 courses. So it was a lot of China. It was a lot of China.
So, aquaculture.
John Foltz. Yeah.
No, aquaculture. Let me ask you something.
Culture.
Yeah, aquaculture. So, farm-raised fish. When it, we all had feelings about it. What was your input on farm-raised fish?
It's funny. I wrote down a couple of things that you've said in the past, and I want to just throw some stuff out, because you have to understand, you don't really realize this, but and I hope you do now, but not only you've done an incredible spearheading of the spirit of what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Man, you're like a hero to me and to so many others of what you have done and how you educate, and your passion towards where we are, where we were, where we're going. And you had a great saying that said, "Taste your tears sometime and taste the salt in your tears." And do you remember that? Do you remember you saying?
Yeah, I'd say, well, it started off with, I think, we're an ocean wrapped in skin.
That's right. I love that. And taste your tears sometime.
Yeah.
We're salty.
Yeah, we're salt water. We're
to bring that point across was really like a, holy shit. Like it was a pretty amazing thing that you said. And I just didn't want to forget to say that, Rick, because, you're so connected to the world of seafood and fish and love of food. And you truly just bleed that inspiration constantly. So back to your question. farm raised fish, wild fish, like we said, there's periods of time, I think, that sometimes things were better than others. Sometimes shipping stuff from all over the world was better than not. Sometimes the farm raised fish or frozen fish, we've had those conversations in the past, are better than they were. So it's an evolution of the industry. It's an evolution of farming. It's an evolution of fishing. And being on the Gulf Coast now for 10 years, going back and forth between Chicago and New Orleans, this will be my 10th year this year doing that. Wow. And getting introduced to John Fulce, who lives and breathes Gulf seafood, was an education for me. I mean, to me, it was almost like if somebody took me out of the Midwest and dropped me in China. Like New Orleans and Louisiana is its own country. It's its own culture. It's its own world. And I didn't know Gulf seafood because I didn't live on the Gulf, meaning I didn't know it the way I know it now. And I didn't understand getting into a boat and going all the way out to where the oil rigs are and looking for salmon or looking for tuna and looking for redfish.
Snapper, grouper.
Snapper and grouper. And I never experienced that until I came into John's life. John came into my life. Going into the bayou, didn't know what that meant. I watched, watched a lot of stuff on TV and, what's the swamp show? Swamp People. It was like, that's real. Oh. That's real. Like,
I guess. Yeah. Knowing John.
I thought it was fake, but it was like, shit, this is like real. The real swamp people, right? And going gigging and going frogging and going alligator hunting and all that crazy shit. I mean, it was like never seen it before, dude. It was unbelievable. I'm a city kid from New York City, upstate New York, Chicago. So to get dropped into, southern Louisiana, it was wild.
Exciting. It's exciting. Like I get excited now when I get to see, like you said, and you said it perfectly, Rick, there's an evolution. There's times where I was completely against farm raised, and now seeing the evolution of large companies or groups or even small companies doing production of products that are pretty amazing. Not so exciting, during its evolution, but amazing in its own right. When we had farm-raised hybrid striped bass, for instance. Great fish. It's not striped bass, but it's great fish. We had farm-raised turbo, and then we had turbo that you could get live. Rod Mitchell was distributing a live turbo. They found out that a turbo slapped up against the side of the fish raising tanks, and they stayed alive. So maybe they could ship them. So we ended up with a live turbo that was still breathing. And insane stuff. And that's the kind of thing that drove us all, and we shared with each other. You would probably talk to this chef, and I think chefs' influence on each other is something that I want to do a whole discussion about that, and who influenced whom and how, and not be afraid to say so. I mean, everybody stole stuff from David Burke when he was in New York City. It was just an insane, 100%. A prolific, creative force to be dealt with. What's Burke doing? What's he up to? It was me, Sam DeMarco, and and Brad Steelman, and all these guys, and Don Pintabona,
and I don't know how we are on time, but man, do I have.
Doesn't matter. Go ahead.
I have a great Burke story.
Okay.
And I have a great Julia Child story. They're very different, but I just have to tell you this Burke story since you brought him up. Remember when Burke used to do, like, he was one of the few that was doing turtle soup, and it was like taboo. It was like,
I was against it. Of course.
Never forget being in his kitchen very late night, very wasted, and having him say, "Come here, I want to show you something," and having me walk to the walk-in and open up the walk-in, and there is the biggest fucking snapping turtle I've ever seen. Or of the walk-in, and he's going,
bleeding it out.
Cut that up tomorrow. We're gonna make turtle soup out of that.
That was Paladin would do that stuff too. We had these game dinners in New Jersey, and we'd have snapping turtle soup, and
or just like trot out blue. Like I remember learning have to do trot out blue and at La Reserve, and you'd have to go in with a net. catch the trout, you'd hit them and stun them. You have to grab them by the gills so you didn't touch any of the slime. You had to cut it down. You had to take out the inside. You laid it carefully into the court bouillon so it
Curl
turned
up and turn blue.
Beautiful. Turn with a little, cebayon potatoes.
Parisien. Oh, those, man. That's why I love this. That's why I enjoy this discussions. And there's no time limit. I want to hear your Julia Child story as well, please.
So, usually everybody, at least in our world, has some kind of Julia Child story.
Sure.
I got to, cook with Julia. She'd been to my restaurant, True. She was at Brasserie Tea. She really became a part of my life in an early part because she was on book tour. She came to Chicago. We had hosted her. We became friends. She used to call me Dearie. And I'm not going to.
You froze up, brother. We'll wait for the world, the universe to bring you back. Okay, Rick.
Julia Child, her and Gail Julia, right?
You might have to go back.
We go in.
I think we had a little technical glitch. Can you start a couple of sentences?
Where'd I lose you?
From the beginning, pretty much.
Yeah,
Julia's story. So, sorry, I didn't do it.
That's okay. So we had a great relationship with Julia, right? So we had come to Chicago to do a book tour. We had hosted her. We had her at our restaurant. We cooked for her. We became friends. Her and Gail became friends. We became friends. She used to call me Dearie.
Right.
Ricky and Dearie. My mom used to call me Ricky, right? Julia Child used to call me Ricky. And so she invites us to Cambridge to do an episode of Baking with Julia.
Mm-hmm.
Go in, you get there. You're in this like grandma house. There's incredible black and white photographs everywhere. Her assistant takes us up to her office. She's on the phone with the White House, crazy shit like that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
She go downstairs. We start prepping, and we get done with we're about halfway through the filming, and she says, "Hey," she goes, "Ricky, would you cook tonight for we were the wrap up. We were the last episode of the series. They called it the wrap, right?" She goes, "Would you cook the wrap dinner for us?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "I have a bunch of stuff already done, but there's one thing that I need you to cook for me, and then we'll take you back to the hotel, get freshened up, and come back." And I'm like, "Well, what is it?" She's like, "Buffalo hump." I'm like, "Buffalo hump? Have you ever cooked buffalo hump before?" I said, "Oh, Julia, I've never cooked buffalo hump before, but I'll figure it out for you." And I'm thinking, and I'm walking through her kitchen, going into her back, and I open up the fridge, and Rick, there's like the biggest, it looked like a steamship round, right? The biggest like buffalo hump, like in the fridge. Somebody sent it to her. I pull it out, and I'm thinking, man, out of all the things that I get to have to cook at Julia Child's house for Julia Child,
buffalo hump.
Right? So
that's awesome.
I'm just gonna treat this like a steamship. So I rub it down with garlic and rosemary, and I roast it. And I said, "Julia," I said, "it's in the oven. Just in about 10 minutes, just have somebody take it out to rest." And because the car was there to take us back.
Right.
We go back, we change, we come back, we walk in, and the whole house is set up beautifully. And it's in her backyard and her outdoor, and there's maybe like 40 people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we get out there, and there's like a turkey in the center of the table. There's all these side dishes, incredible. And I turn to Gail, and I'm like, "There's a turkey on the table." I said, "Oh my God, my buffalo hump didn't come out." I said, "Julia, where's the buffalo hump?" She goes, "Oh, dearie, it's in the back. It's resting." I said, "Well, why do you have a turkey?" She goes, "Oh, well, some people don't like meat, so I made a turkey too." I said, "Okay." So we all sit down, we're eating. She's thanking Jeffrey Drummond. She's thanking all her people. After the whole thing, she turns to me and she goes, "And I just want to thank Rick for the best hump I've ever had." And everybody just fell out, man.
Oh.
I gave Julia her best hump. Don't ever.
All right, man. You're going to always be remembered for that. We didn't even get to talk about Afghanistan, Operation Hot. Me and you flying across the world, around the world to entertain our troops, organized by Chef Charles Carroll.
5,000 we cooked that day, right? For 5,000 troops. It was a lot of troops.
No kidding. Well, that was all.
We
from John
got to
Paul's.
bunk together. We got to bunk together with security out the door. I felt more protected in my life, you know.
It was incredible, and that's really where I got to know you. We were sitting in an airplane that you can't even call it an airplane. It's an aircraft that you could put a couple of houses in, and we were sitting along the sidelines, and I was sitting next to you, and we really got to talk about so much more than we had time for, because I mean, your life, your spirituality, you know, come on, baby, bring it out, baby, faith, chef. I mean, you to me, you're one of my icons, you know, really. I mean, you're younger than me. I followed you through my career, and I just find you an amazing person.
Thank you.
A wonderful chef, and never stopping, still driven by the love of just cooking. Your ego is almost non-existent to me. You know, you're crazy at times. Let's not get it wrong, because you had to get there. I love that. That's just determination. It's grit. It's who you are. And your journey had some challenges, etc. And you came out on top. And not everybody can do that. Very, very few can. And I just want to tell you that this has been a fascinating interview. I've learned so much more about you. Just hearing you go through it all. I just sit here and smile. And I don't want to interrupt, but I have so many things that are just so similar in you know, the parallels that brought you to where you are today in front of your library. Be able to spend some time with me. From my heart, I thank you, and I thank everybody that's taken the time to listen to our podcast here today. And Rick, I'm not done with you, pal. We'll bring you back around. This series, I hope, continues to go on. And if 3 people are listening, or 3 million, it's really what makes us who we are. And
anytime, brother. It's always a pleasure, and I would love to talk more, and especially talk about the influences. I think that's a great segment to do. It really is. Well,
it's just the interconnection. And, you know, when you're on my podcast, Ocean Raised, you also get to be involved in the pre-testing of when the products start to come out. First, we have Amberjack that's going to be available in February of next year. And then we're going to be, they're farm-raising Forever Oceans, by the way, is the name of the company. It's a startup, and they're going to be farm raising red snapper and grouper and things that we haven't seen before. So this is going to be an interesting period, and they're doing it in a very sustainable way. And I think you can trust that I have done my research on that, put my reputation and name out there for it. But I haven't tasted anything either. So we're all kind of like anticipating the you know, I want to like get my sleeping bag and be outside the front door to taste the first fish out of this farm, because they're doing it right, and it sounds really interesting. So you're involved in that, but you didn't know you signed up for it, but you're going to get free sample. You're going to get some samples sent out to you.
I'm in.
And I'm sure our life isn't. We're not done, baby. You and me. I love you, brother. Thank you so much. You have a great day. Thanks for your time. Very precious. And
thanks, brother.
See you soon.
Love you too.
Later.
foreveroceans.com